Okay, so let's start with this topic, fabrication technology. So this will show the different steps that are required to actually fabricate the chip. Okay. So this diagram I have just shown here to get a view that finally what would a CMOS inverter, how would a CMOS inverter look after fabrication. Okay, this you may not be understanding at this time, but just to introduce this to you. Okay, we have substrate N type, we have, so this is um, no, this should be P type, right? This is, I think this is wrong. This is P type substrate. Okay, so this should be a P type substrate. Okay, and in this it means that this particular region is P type region. This is P type region. Okay, and this area is N well or N type region, so we call this as N well. Okay, a well in the substrate that is of N type. Now this P type substrate will be used for fabricating N MOSFET. So we have the source of NMOS, okay, the drain of NMOS. N plus region means the doping concentration is high, and the channel that exists between source and drain is this is the channel that exists between source and drain. Okay, and similarly this N-type material will be, or N-type well will be used for fabricating PMOS. Okay, so this is the source of PMOS, this is the source for NMOS. Okay, and this is the channel that will act as that will connect the source and drain for PMOS. Okay, and this is the gate for PMOS, this is the gate for NMOS, right? So we have source, gate and drain for NMOS, source, gate and drain for PMOS. Okay, I think till now we just focus on this, and later on when we will see the actual operation of the CMOS inverter, I will explain the other terminals. Okay, this is just for reference, not much to worry about or to remember this thing. This, with practice, you will remember, it will get in your mind automatically. Okay, so let's start with the fabrication technology. The first step is to form the silicon crystal. Okay, silicon crystal is grown by this by a method known as Czochralski method. I think CZHO Czochralski, KLRASKI something. The spelling is something like this. Okay, and this is the setup for the Czochralski method. Okay, but look at here. Pure silicon is melted in a pot at around 1400 degrees Celsius. So it is uh, heated at a high temperature. Okay, and a small seed, and one seed is required. Okay, and this seed will be the will be the main factor, the main thing that will cause, that will help us in the growth of the crystal. Okay, and the seed that contains the desired crystal orientation is inserted into molten silicon and slowly pulled out. Okay, what is the speed? Typical speed is around 1 millimeter per minute, so this is a very slow process. Okay, and the crystal orientation that we want in the silicon crystal, the same crystal orientation seed is dipped into the molten silicon and then pulled out. Okay, okay, so this is dipped in the molten silicon and pulled out very slowly while rotating, okay, and when it is pulled out, what happens is that the silicon crystal grows with the seed, and it comes out in this form, in this cylindrical form. So this is the final silicon cylindrical cylinder that comes out with the seed. Okay, and this is the final setup. This is the final setup for this. Look at this. This is the molten silicon. Okay, this is the container that contains this molten silicon, and then this is the crucible, silica crucible, right? And this is the seed holder. This is the seed, and it is being pulled up with the help of a pulling wire, and also at the same time it is being pulled up, this is rotated also. Okay, rotated also, and these are the auxiliary things that are there in the system. So basically we have to understand the funda that a seed is dipped into a molten silicon, and it is pulled up while rotating at a very slow speed. It is pulled up with a speed of 1 mm per minute, right? And when it comes out, we get the required silicon cylinder that we want to grow, that we want to form. Okay, so this is how a single crystal of silicon is formed. Mind it, this is a single crystal silicon. So the orientation of the the orientation of the silicon atoms will be same throughout the crystal, right? Okay, so finally after the process is done, the crystal looks like this, the cylinder looks like this. Okay, so this is a long cylinder of silicon. Okay, now we want to cut this silicon in thin wafers, thin slices of silicon. Okay, so this is cut with the help of cutter, and the thickness of one wafer is kept around 1 mm or so, 1 mm or 0.5 mm or something like that, right? So the silicon crystal, in some cases also containing the doping, right, is manufactured as a cylinder with a diameter of 8 to 12 inches. The diameter of this cylinder is around 8 to 12 inches. Okay, earlier it used to be 8 inches. Now it is, now with the modern technology, the diameter has grown, and we now have a wider silicon wafers of around 12 inches. Okay, the cylinder is carefully sawed into thin discs, and we call those thin discs as wafers, and these wafers will be used for the actual fabrication of ICs. Okay, the wafers will contain ICs. The ICs will be fabricated on these wafers, right? And these wafers are later polished before being used for IC fabrication. Okay, so the next point is the basic electrical and mechanical properties of the wafer depend on the orientation of the crystalline structure, the impurity concentrations, and the type of impurities present. Okay, so these will decide the basic electrical and mechanical properties of the wafer. And we want to have a pure silicon crystal, a single silicon crystal which is pure in nature, right? We do not want to have any kind of impurity, but in some cases some impurities may be added, but we do not want any unwanted impurity. Okay, so like some kind of dust materials or some other atoms which may harm the silicon crystal structure internally. Okay, the required doping that we want, that is the trivalent impurity or pentavalent impurity. Okay, those are the required, desired ones. Okay, so once if required, those impurities may be added, but other than those, the unrequired, the non-required, or the non-desired, undesired impurities, okay, like the dust particles and other things, they should be avoided. They should be totally avoided, otherwise it will hamper the electrical characteristics of the silicon wafer. Okay, so these variables are strictly controlled, and hence for forming the silicon crystal growth, right? Okay, so there are few terms which are common steps in the fabrication process or fabrication steps of ICs. Okay, we will see those terms first one by one, and then we will go to the overall steps for the actual fabrication. Okay, but before that we should be able to, you know, comfortable with those common steps, process steps that are used in IC fabrication. Okay, so let's start with this first common step. This is called as oxidation. So oxidation of what? Oxidation of silicon wafers, right? Because on these wafers we are going to fabricate ICs. So what happens if we perform oxidation process of silicon? It will form mm, it will form an insulator called as silicon dioxide. Okay, uh, and how it is done? It is done, the oxidation of silicon is done at high temperatures around 10 to 1000 to 1200 degrees Celsius, right? And it can be done uh, in two forms. Like there are two methods of performing oxidation of silicon. Okay, the first is dry oxidation and the second is wet oxidation, right? So what happens is that in dry oxidation we perform the oxidation, or we bombard this wafer with oxygen gas, right? And in wet oxidation we perform the oxidation of silicon wafers by passing, steam, water stream over it, over the wafers, because steam, water contains hydrogen and oxygen also, right? So the oxygen will react with the silicon to form SiO2, and hydrogen gas will be released separately. Okay, so there are two types of oxidation process: dry oxidation and wet oxidation. Okay, so in general wet oxidation has a faster growth rate. Okay, but dry oxidation gives better electrical characteristic. Okay, so the case when we do not require very high quality silicon dioxide, we can go for wet oxidation, because it gives us a faster growth rate of oxidation of silicon dioxide growth. Okay, but when we require a better quality, a high quality SiO2, then we can go with dry oxidation process, right? So let's say this is a pure silicon substrate which does not before the oxidation process. Then after performing oxidation, after performing oxidation process, okay, this will look like this. Okay, so this is the silicon substrate, right? And on the top of this layer of SiO2 is formed. So this layer of SiO2 is being formed. Look at this. Okay, and this is the original silicon surface. This is the original silicon surface. So some part of oxidation, some part of SiO2 has gone into the wafer layer. Okay, and some part has come over the wafer layer. Okay, so this is like inserted inserted inside the silicon. Okay, and also grown above the silicon. So both are happening here. Okay, so this was the actual silicon interface, and after fabrication, after oxidation of this silicon for silicon dioxide, the actual SiO2 layer is this one, right? Okay, the next common term is photolithography. You might have heard about it. I know, I think, because this is a pretty common term. So what does this says is that this is basically about patterning of the silicon wafers. Okay, patterning means when we want to transfer some kind of shapes, some patterns on the top of the silicon wafer, then there photolithography process is used. Okay, so this photolithography, also called optical lithography or UV lithography, because sometimes ultraviolet rays are also used. Okay, so is a process used in fabrication to pattern parts on a thin film, because the thin film or the bulk of the substrate. Okay, the substrate is basically the wafer. So either the patterning is required on the top of the substrate or on the top of the wafer, or or patterning is required on a thin film that is already deposited on the top of the wafer, right? So whatever is the case, we require to transfer some geometrical shapes, we require to transfer some we require to pattern those layers, and hence for patterning those layers photolithography process is used. Okay, so how it is done actually, uh, it is shown here in the next slide. Okay, so look at this. This shows the process of photolithography. First we will concentrate on this, the upper two layers, okay, the upper two parts. Okay, positive photoresist. So this is patterning using a material called as a photoresist material. Okay, and there are two types of photoresist materials: positive photoresist materials and negative photoresist materials, right? So these two, the upper two layers shows the patterning with positive photoresist layer. Okay, and this one shows with a negative. So let's start with this one, positive. So here a silicon substrate is taken. This is the wafer actually. Okay, and SiO2 layer to be patterned. Okay, this is the SiO2 layer, this is the silicon dioxide layer that is formed by that process. What process? Oxidation process. Okay, so this is SiO2 layer, and then above, on the top of this SiO2 layer, one more layer is deposited. This is the, in this case it is the positive photoresist material, right? Positive photoresist material. So this is also a kind of material that is used in photolithography process. Okay, then what happens is that we have a mask. A mask is nothing but it will be a sheet, okay, a glass sheet that will have some transparent areas and some opaque areas. So this is the transparent area, this is the opaque area. Okay, and how are these transparent and opaque areas defined? They are defined by the shapes that we want to transfer on the top of the silicon substrate. Okay, so suppose I want to transfer this kind of shape, this one I want to transfer, and this area I want to transfer, right? Okay, so put a photomask disk on the top of this setup, on the top of the silicon substrate wafer. Okay, and a light is passed through this photomask material. Okay, it is bombarded with light or UV ultraviolet rays or simple optical rays. Okay, so now since these are transparent areas, so light can pass through this transparent areas. Okay, and will reach to the top of photoresist material. Here it will reach to the top of photoresist material, but it will go, okay, from the transparent areas it is able to pass. Okay, but from the areas which are opaque, okay, this will not pass, they will just get blocked. Okay, they will not be able to pass through this region on the top of photoresist, right? Okay, so what happens is that in this case this area and this area and this area gets exposed to the light. Okay, and the property of photoresist, in this case a positive photoresist, okay, the positive photoresist will react with the light. Okay, and wherever it has come in contact with the light, that particular area becomes soft or soluble in nature. Okay, and the areas which are still not in contact with the light, they will remain still, hard or non-soluble in nature. Okay, so what happens is that after this is done, this is performed, okay, then it will be divided in some parts. Okay, like say this one, this photoresist material will be divided into some regions, like we can say like this. Okay, and these regions will be defined by the amount of light, or the regions which are exposed and which are not exposed to light. Okay, so this area is exposed to light, this will become soluble. This area is exposed to light, this will become soluble. this area is also exposed to light. This will become soluble, and since they are soluble, they can be etched out with the help of some chemical solvent. Okay, and when you remove these areas, okay, which have become soluble in nature, we will be left with only this particular area and this particular area. Okay, and it will look like this. Okay, this area is gone, this area is gone, this area is gone, only this area and this area is left, right? Okay, fine. Now after this, we still have this SiO2 layer. This SiO2 layer standing on sitting on the top of silicon substrate. Okay, now the thing is, we need to pattern this SiO2 layer. Okay, our aim is not to pattern the photoresist layer, although it is a middle step, but the final aim is to pattern the SiO2 layer, right? So this area which is exposed again, this area of SiO2 which is exposed again, and this area of SiO2 layer which is exposed again, they can be again etched out with the help of some chemical solvent. Okay, and when you perform the etching, we will be left with this area and this area, right? So it will look like this. Look, this area of SiO2 layer, this area of SiO2 layer, and this area of SiO2 layer is gone. They are etched out. Okay, and then after getting the required shape of SiO2, okay, we will just remove this layer of photoresist with the help of again some etching process, and the final patterning of SiO2 layer will come into existence like this. Okay, so finally what we have done, we have traveled through these steps. Okay, so this was the first step and this is the last step, and we have obtained this one. Wherever this a continuous layer of SiO2 was sitting on the silicon substrate, but now here we have got the desired shape of SiO2 that we wanted to achieve, right? Okay, so these were the steps with photoresist material which are positive in nature. Now the opposite of this process can be performed with the help of another type of photoresist material that are called as negative photoresist material. So what happens is this, that the properties of negative photoresist material is just the opposite of the positive photoresist material. Okay, now in this case the regions which were exposed to light became soluble, right? But in the case of negative photoresist material, this happens in a reverse opposite way. That is, the areas which are exposed to sunlight, okay, they will become hard. This area will become hard, this area of photoresist material will become hard. Okay, and the areas which are not exposed to light or UV rays, they will be soft. Okay, so in this case, when we perform the etching on this photoresist material, the hard areas will still remain. Okay, they will remain, this will remain, okay, and this will remain, and these areas in between will go out, and we will be left with this kind of structure for negative photoresist. Okay, again etch out this SiO2 layer which is visible, we will be left with this kind of structure. Then perform the etching. These top layers should be removed, and then this particular patterning of SiO2 will be visible. So either with the help of this, the first and last step, or with negative photoresist, the first and last step will be like this. Okay, so what we have achieved here is that we have done some steps, we have performed some steps in order to pattern, or in order to reshape the SiO2 layer. Okay, here the continuous SiO2 layer was present, but here this is present in this area and this area. Okay, and here it is present like this in this area, in this area, and this in this area. Okay, and why is this important? It will become clear when we will see the whole, the complete steps. Okay, but this is required. So this is what happens in the photolithography process. Okay, so this is what it is written here. So it uses light to transfer a geometric pattern from a photo mask, also called as optical mask, to a photosensitive, light sensitive chemical photoresist on the substrate. Okay. In complex ICs, a CMOS wafer may go through the photolithographic cycle as many as 50 times. So we have seen here in just 3 or 4 or 5 steps, but actually this is a complex process, and this takes much more number of steps. Okay. So this image shows that how does like this is the wafer, the circular wafer that was cut from the cylindrical silicon crystal, remember. Okay. And this is rotated. Okay, this is rotated, and while it is rotated, some amount of photoresist material is spilled on in the center of this. Okay. And because of the centrifugal force, this photoresist material gets evenly distributed on the area of this wafer, this circular wafer. Okay, like this. So this will get evenly distributed like this, and after it is deposited over the surface, we can go for the patterning like this that we have already seen. Fine. Okay. So what we have seen, two steps, two processes, methods: oxidation and photolithography, right? Next is okay, this is the same, these explain the same steps that we have seen in the earlier slides. Okay, this you can use for revising those steps. This is photoresist material, this is photo mask, then UV light bombarded, it is passing through this region, and then those things we have already seen. Okay. Etching. Etching is required when like for example here we wanted to remove this area, and this area, which became soft, right? So how do we remove these areas? These areas are removed from the top with the help of a process known as etching. So etching means to remove some part, right? So this is why it is called the process, etching process. So like this, to permanently imprint the photographic patterns onto the wafer, chemical wet etching or dry etching procedures can be used. So again, there are two types of etching, wet and dry. Okay. So different chemical solutions can be used to remove different layers. For example, hydrofluoric acid, HF acid, can be used to etch out SiO2, right? Potassium hydroxide, KOH, can be used to etch out the silicon layer, and phosphoric acid can be used for etching out the metal layer or aluminum layer, right? So in wet etching, the chemical usually attacks the exposed regions that are not protected by the photoresist layer in all directions. And this is also called as isotropic etching. Okay, and depending on the thickness of the layer to be etched, a certain amount of undercut will occur. Okay, we will see. Look at here. This figure shows the case for the figure A shows the case for isotropic etching. So what happens when you perform the etching on SiO2 layer here, and because this is isotropic in nature, some undercuts also happen like this. Okay, we wanted this etching to be perfect like this. Okay, this we wanted like to be a perfect vertical line. Okay, we did not want this area to be etched out. This area we did not want to be etched out, but it was still etched out. Okay, and this unwanted area that was etched out in this process is known as one undercut, right? And similarly, okay, this area is also undercut. Okay, so this is not a perfect a perfect patterning. This is not a case of perfect etching. Okay, so what happens, we can where we want to get a very high quality of a very high accuracy of etching areas, we can go for another process called as anisotropic etching. Okay, and in this process the this undercut does not occur, the undercuts does not appear. Okay, so this is a kind of perfect etching out. Okay, so this will give you a more accurate patterning of SiO2 as compared to the isotropic etching. Okay, so let's see what does it says. It says that depending on the thickness of the layer to be etched, a certain amount of undercut will occur. Okay, therefore the dimension of the actual pattern will differ slightly from the original pattern. Right, we wanted something else, but we will get something else because of that undercut. So in the case when exact dimension is critical, anisotropic etching can be used. Right, so it is a directional bombardment of the exposed surface using a corrosive gas or ions. Okay, the cross section of the etched layer is usually highly directional. Okay, and hence it is called anisotropic etching. Okay, and has the same dimension as the photoresist pattern. Right, so there are two types of etching, isotropic and anisotropic. Okay, where the accuracy of dimension is not important, we can go with isotropic etching, or but when accuracy is more important, then we can go with anisotropic etching. Fine. Okay, next is diffusion.